Hello everyone, friends. My name is Denis Galanzowski. Today we are going to discuss a lot of very interesting news that concerns the future of peace in Ukraine. In fact, there are a lot of different circumstances, but we will analyze all of this now, and everyone will be able to draw their own conclusion about whether peace will come by the end of this year or at the beginning of 2026. Watch the video to the end and support it with likes, comments, and subscriptions. Thank you all, friends. So, first of all, Politico, citing an American official, states that Kyiv has only a few days to accept the United States proposal on security guarantees, and it is time limited. Also, the White House is seeking to push Kyiv and Moscow toward a peace agreement by Catholic Christmas, that is, by December 25th. But if this does not happen, the United States security guarantee proposal may be withdrawn. As for the security guarantees, we will talk about that, but a little later. Politico also notes that the Trump administration is pressuring Europe to block the transfer of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. What I want to say from myself is that, in principle, Trump doesn't even need to pressure anyone, because there are enough countries in the European Union that are completely and entirely against transferring these funds to Ukraine. First of all, Belgium is against it, since the money is actually held in their accounts. If Belgium does not agree to this, then no one will transfer this money, and the European Union will not be able to force Belgium to do it. Regarding United States security guarantees, Zelensky says that Ukraine needs to know how the United States and Europe will react in the event of another Russian attack. Sanctions, weapons, responses, what the reaction will be at sea, on the battlefield, and so on. So there are really a lot of things here. I really want to get the clearest possible answers to this, and for them to be properly supported. As I said, in a legally binding format, that is, not in the format of memorandums like it was with the Budapest Memorandum, but so that it is concrete, specifically voted on at the government level of those countries that want to provide Ukraine with these security guarantees. At the moment, we see that both Europe and the States are dodging this as much as possible, and no one is ready to provide any real guarantees. Zelensky also stated that he noted that after peace is established, people who changed their profession and became military personnel after Russia's invasion have the right to return home. What can the partners in Ukraine do to encourage them to stay in the army? For example, additional funding can be provided and contracts can be offered. We understand many of those people are now serving in the military in Ukraine. After the war ends, some of them will definitely go abroad, and some will simply leave the military and never want to return. That's reality, just normal statistics after any war. Next, Kaja Kallas states that Russia cannot avoid paying the price for the war in Ukraine. The European Union Commissioner for Foreign Policy spoke in The Hague at a meeting marking the creation of the International Commission on Compensation for Damages in Ukraine. The Commission, which recognizes compensation for war damages in Ukraine that must be paid by Russia, sends a signal to future aggressors: if you start a war, you will be held accountable. But we see that as of today, neither Europe nor the United States wants or is able to hold Russia accountable in any way. They cannot even force it to stop the bloody war. So, unfortunately, talking about any kind of reparations in the real world is out of the question. On Twitter, yes, and in various coalitions, powerful and willing ones also yes. But is it possible in the realities we have today? Well, I don't see it, maybe I'm wrong, but write your opinion in the comments, friends, under this video. The next ones are very alarming signals. The French and Germans want to reduce aid to Ukraine, while the Americans, Canadians, and British want to increase it. This is according to a Politico poll. A rift has emerged between the European Union and its English-speaking allies over support for Ukraine, according to a Politico poll conducted in early December. In 5 countries, the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, the United States, and France, these are allies on key issues. Firstly, 45% of Germans supported reducing financial aid, while only 20% wanted to increase it. In France, 37% wanted to give Kyiv less, and 24% prefer increasing support. What does this mean? This means that, in fact, the real actions of France and Germany are not what they say, not what they talk about when they claim how strongly they will support Ukraine. Specifically, their real actions are actually confirmed by these exit polls. Yes, about the fact that people want to reduce support for Ukraine so that this money stays inside their own countries. In Germany and France, the biggest opponents of aid were among the supporters of far-right parties, namely the Alternative for Germany Party and the French National Rally. And as we know, in both Germany and France, far-right forces have been gaining momentum for several years now. We see exactly the same thing in Hungary, the Czech Republic, Poland, Slovakia, and in some other countries of the European Union. And this trend will only continue. Almost 40% of Americans, Britons, and Canadians supported a higher level of military aid, while about 20% were against it. If we take, for example, the United States of America, we see that today, unfortunately, people there don't decide anything. Trump came to power, and instead of providing more aid and support to Ukraine, he actually reduced it to zero, which he has stated repeatedly. So does it make sense what people there think right now? I don't think so. Then Germany became the only country where the majority of respondents, that is, more than 50%, believed that their government should accept fewer Ukrainian refugees. Then half of Germans also stated that Berlin should reduce support for Ukrainians who have already settled in the country. For example, what do I associate this with? I directly link such a rhetorical shift in Germany to this. Friends with anti-Ukrainian and pro-Russian activities, including through various political forces and media affiliated with Russia, which feel quite comfortable there, which sympathize with Russia, and this probably existed even earlier. This story began to emerge right after the end of World War II, when East Germany went to the Soviet Union. And quite a large number of Russians settled there and still live there to this day, their descendants and so on. It's not surprising, and the anti-Ukrainian propaganda funded by Russia is spreading and developing not only in Germany, but also in other European Union countries, unfortunately. Next, the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Vales, stated that Trump believes Putin does not want peace and intends to seize all of Ukraine. And what else did she talk about? Donald Trump's name appears in the documents related to the Epstein case. United States Vice President J.D. Vance was a supporter of conspiracy theories for a decade, and his shift from a critic to an ally of Trump was political, driven by his ambitions in the Senate rather than by principles. Vales described Elon Musk as a heavy ketamine user, an eccentric and strange guy whose actions were often irrational and terrified her. Next, Trump acts with the conviction that there is nothing he cannot do. Vales calls the head of the White House a person with the personality of an alcoholic. It's easy for her to work with him because she grew up with an alcoholic father. Next. This is a very interesting thing. And after the publication of this interview, Vales stated that Vanity Fair ignored important context. In her words, she claims that a lot was omitted and actually distorted. So it's absolutely unclear how accurately they conveyed her points. But it's very interesting how the head of the White House responds about her employers next. Washington is preparing new sanctions against Russia if Putin rejects the peace agreement. Bloomberg reports this. According to the agency's sources, the United States may impose restrictions against Russia's shadow fleet as well as against traders who facilitate transactions with Russian oil products. And there are just major corporations involved there making billions from this. It is noted that the United States Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, discussed potential sanctions with the European Services Group earlier this week, but the final decision still rests with Trump. So I would also like us to listen now to the statement of military lawyer Taras Borovsky, who actually hints that maybe Ukraine shouldn't strive to join those alliances. To NATO, for example, yes, which are now becoming one of the reasons why they can't sign a peace agreement there. Yes, one of the key reasons, because there are two main reasons. It's the surrender of territory in Donbass, and it's whether or not Ukraine joins NATO. Let's listen to him.
NATO today, if we analyze it, is made up of two large groups that basically set the tone there, two major groups of countries. These are partly friends of Russia, as we can see, and the second large group is simply cowards. Why should we try to join the society of cowards and friends of Russia? We need a society of enemies of Russia. We can create what is already a well-known idea. Such an idea exists. Intermarium is a Baltic Black Sea Union, you could say, a union. That is, we can unite with the Baltic countries, with Poland, which is also one of these countries.
Let's be honest, the Baltic countries, no matter how friendly they are to Ukraine, are too small to stand up to Russia. And most likely, if they were not NATO members and if American troops were not stationed there, then most likely by now they would already be some kind of pseudo-republics affiliated with Russia. Let's put it this way, and that's the first point. Secondly, how realistic is it that Ukraine can afford to enter into any kind of alliances with anyone? And to decide whether it can join an alliance or not, whether it can lead it or not? The only problem is that Ukraine is, let's say, under external financing. Yes, when you don't have your own resources, when other countries, not just countries or organizations, not only give money and weapons, but when they start dictating the rules for Ukraine to fight by, like whether to strike with some long-range weapons deep into Russia or not, when they write laws for Ukraine that need to be adopted, for example, a law to increase taxes for private entrepreneurs so that they pay an additional 20% value-added tax and so on. In my opinion, Ukraine really can't make real decisions on its own today because everything comes down to one simple truth. If Ukraine starts doing what is specifically beneficial for itself and not for the partner member countries, then the funding will simply stop. If the funding in Ukraine stops, then Ukraine as a state will simply cease to exist. So I think that reasonable people already understand that Europe, the states are there. Yes, they all help Ukraine for only one reason, because it is specifically beneficial for them right now at this moment in time. If tomorrow it stops being beneficial for them, you'll see that the help and support will end very abruptly. Ukraine will be left one-on-one with Russia. So in the current realities we have now, can Ukraine actually make any real decisions in its foreign policy? I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. You might have your own opinion on this, so write it in the comments.
We need to look for Russia's enemies all over the world and make friends with them. Maybe, and I think that Japan could already become our friend. Japan could become our friend at a certain historical stage in the future. China, even if it supports Russia right now, without a doubt. I think all Chinese school children know, and they are taught, how Russia brazenly took part of their lands there in Siberia, the Far East, and so on. And every Chinese schoolchild dreams that one day they will make Crimea theirs in their own way, over there at home. Accordingly, they will not lose their appetites in any case. And at a certain time, let's say, the enemy of our enemy may become our friend. Accordingly, we have to look for friends among Ukraine and the governments in exile of the oppressed peoples of the North Caucasus. And I think that if the situation in the North Caucasus were to escalate now, if the national liberation struggle of the peoples of Dagestan and Ichkeria intensified, then probably Russia's focus would shift away from Ukraine and its forces would be scattered. We have to look for Russia's enemies, not Russia's friends, not neutral countries that can't figure out who's to blame, who took what from whom. We don't understand whether it's Ukraine or Russia, who attacked whom. One channel says one thing, another says something else. We don't need these people who can't understand who's right and who's wrong.
It's all really cool, actually. He says the right things. But again, the only problem that remains today, in my subjective opinion, which may not coincide with reality, Ukraine does not have the luxury of deciding who to be friends with and who not to be friends with. Ukraine is simply friends with those who provide resources, who give resources. And everything depends to some extent on this very factor. What do you think about this, friends? Write in the comments. It will be very interesting to hear and read your opinion. I wish everyone a good day. See you.